Ladies and gentlemen, our next session is how neuroscience is shaping AI and business innovation.
You know, Moran, I'm a little disappointed. The last time I was here, I was, with this actor, Seth Rogen, and the room was full, and, everybody was ready to roll. I come out here with, one of the smartest humans on the planet, and everybody's abandoning us for, coffee and biscuits in the back.
This actor, my opener, I call him.
He's your opener,
Yeah.
right? It's like he's the opening act,
Yeah.
and then here we go. Well, you are, for those you don't know, certainly one of the smartest people on the planet. You're a professor at Columbia. You focus on neuroscience, artificial intelligence, and I don't know how this gets put together, but the future of nuclear.
Yes.
When I called Mohan, I was in one of those typical days as a CEO, 4 hours in a car for 2 hours of meetings. And I just was trying to catch up with friends and talk about what we were going to talk about. And I said, so what are you doing for the weekend? And you said, well, the Pope called, and he's thinking about how they're going to change the future nuclear strategy of the Vatican. Now, I didn't know there was a Vatican nuclear strategy, or whatever it is. And you said, I'm going to go spend the weekend with the Pope.
It's the beginning of a joke, like a Jewish guy.
Right?
Pope and
like you would think that's like, by the way, 99 times out of 100, if a friend had told me that, I'd be like, that's bullshit. With you, it's true, right?
Yeah, I wish he was my opener.
Right.
Yeah, okay.
The pontiff would be a good opener,
Yeah.
right? Even Seth might have to sit next to him. But in all seriousness, you are one of the foremost experts on neuroscience. How is neuroscience going to change business over the next 10 years?
So I'll give you one or two ideas that my colleagues and I play with right now in the lab that I think are going to be in everyone's lives in the next 10 years that are relevant to people here. So here's one that I think is important. Controlling your dreams and using dreams as a conduit for marketing.
Can I insert my wife into my dreams?
You can insert your wife into your dreams. You can think about it right now. You go on a date with your wife. The two of you come home and you go to sleep side by side, but everyone basically goes to their own world. Now we can make it so that you continue your date in your dream. You can go to the same place, experience something together. So that's a fantastic application.
Is this like Inception? Like, Leonardo DiCaprio, we've gone from Seth Rogen to Leo now? We're going to insert?
We can put him in your
Do
dream.
I have to buy an airline?
So I think that the point here is that we can start to navigate the content of your dream. And what it means is that there's a room for entertainment. You can actually, and there's a room for marketing, which is a place that content could be injected into your conscious awareness and be used when you wake up. And
I can only imagine how the European Union's going to look at that one.
So I think that they're not wrong, right? Like they're basically saying there's a moment where your defenses are down and someone can control what you see. So there's a reason for their concern, and I share their concern in that sense. And I think that in the same way, everyone here in this room should know about it right now when it's still in the lab and not out there. That's one. Do you want another one?
I mean, geez, that was a pretty good one. Let's take another.
So
is the next one as good, or how far down the yield curve are we going?
I started with my best, but I think that it's not going to disappoint anyone.
I know you well enough to know you're going to start with your best, right?
Let me think now. I have to. Okay, so here's one that I wasn't going to go with that, but if you wanted kind of to go up, I'm going to take one that really challenges what is the fabric of our reality right now, and that is our memories. We're now, as neuroscientists, playing with the ideas of changing and controlling our memories, which means.
So now we're in total recall.
Totally, exactly. and the movie's perception of that is that we're going to give you experiences that you don't.
Go on vacation in your memories, and as long as you don't have an embolism, you'll be fine.
That's the positive. That's the fantastic experience. And the other
didn't work out so well for Arnold.
Didn't he win?
Well, in the end, he wins.
Yeah.
But Sharon Stone tries to kill him. I mean,
there's a moment, yeah.
Yeah.
So the bad side and the good sides kind of go together in that sense, which is we're going to be able to go to Mars in our mind and have the experience. The dark side is that reality is going to be now an option. Like you and I go through an experience right now, we think it's real. Tomorrow, all that's going to be left is a memory. And if the memory that can go into this moment could be changed, suddenly you have a question, hey, was I actually on stage with this guy, or did it not happen. And
now you're putting like 5 movies together. Like that's incredible, right?
And in a way where
like, will the top keep turning, or is it going to go like that at the end of
Eternal
Inception?
Sunshine of the Spotless Mind goes there. Like whatever you pick your move, pick your science. Here's the saying that I love is the difference between science fiction and science is timing. All the movies that you know right now happening.
So let me ask you a question. It's not on the list, but that's something I think of all the time, right? You know I wouldn't stay to the list anyway.
Yes.
How much of that is we can only create what we think of as possible? Meaning, is science fiction the roadmap for science?
So it's a great one. I think so. I think that there's this Wittgenstein sentence where you think in words, and whatever you can't say, you can't think. And I have a colleague who's a professor of psychology in England, and he was born without his right hand. So he never had his right hand, but being an engineer, he built a robotic prosthetic hand that he can use to navigate the world. And the cool thing about this thing is because he built it, it has functions that the real hand that we have don't have. Like he can turn it full circle. So he can have thoughts like, did I leave my hands working or did I turn it off? Which we don't have. Or can I put a light bulb in one move? So all of those thoughts are in his brain, and we don't have those thoughts, which means that his reality is richer. He can think of things that we don't have as an option. And in that sense, I think that his world is different than ours. And the more we have the tools that allow us to see things that are not out there right now, we can think thoughts that are not really with us yet.
Well, it's like if you look at entrepreneurs, right? 80+% of entrepreneurs are one concentric circle away from another entrepreneur because they see the realm of possible. Mm-hmm. Right?
Once you can imagine it, I think the steps to making it are a lot easier than if you cannot even conceive it. And I think that's if you want, imagination's biggest thing is you can imagine something, you sit in your own mind, and now it's just a matter of how do you turn it into other people's minds and to reality. So
if you're thinking about sort of what's next, those sound pretty far out, right? Like you said 10 years, I'm not sure that we get there. What's next year? Like what's happening in neuroscience, and what are we going to see as sort of what we would call at Zeta as a quick win versus a more longer term win?
So still in the realm of kind of possibilities, but tangible already in FDA clinical trials or in some groups is neural implants. That's still not kind of...
Well, didn't Elon just get approved?
Just got approved. He's looking for patients, so that's a big step. And
Were you thinking about it?
So not thinking about it, all of the students of mine that finished the PhD go work for him. So he's like, I'm the opening actor.
No, meaning are you thinking about getting one of the implants?
Oh, so you know, so because the world is so excited, I'm taking the position of why not. If the world would say why not, I would take the position of why yes. So I feel like my job is to kind of keep the stakes a little bit calibrated. So right now he's talking about it. The viewership is huge. Everyone wants it. He has like a sign up of 10,000 people who want to go there. So I feel that my job is to tell people, wait, here's what's risky about that. That's why I'm going to do that for that. But I think
by the way, I'm open to it, but I don't want to be in the top. The early cohort,
the first
right?
one. Yeah. So definitely, you know, it's you know, there's always the question of like, do you want to be the first guy to land on the moon with the risk of not being the guy who makes it there?
Thank God it worked out well for Neil Armstrong.
So there's kind of this question here. I think that he has a variety of people who offer themselves, and it's because he's selling it, and so is his colleagues as a remedy for a problem. We can actually fix Alzheimer. We can actually do something too. So that's the kind of the starting point. And at the same time, there's going to be a neural implant in your brain, and now we can start directing thoughts to you, which is not in your lives right now, but it's the closest thing that my field has brought to the world of business that I can imagine everyone in this room in the next 5 years having to have a thought on.
Do neuroscience and artificial intelligence interact, or do they intersect at some point?
So I think that there's a, you know...
By the way, we can't do a panel without AI, right?
Yeah,
like, you just couldn't do it today.
So I feel, first of all, I think that, you know, to not claim all the credit, but I think that a lot of AI comes from taking ideas from neuroscience that have been with us for a while and turning them into machines. The way the brain learns by examples and by experience is what we call now machine learning, which is you show people examples and you have the computer figure out a rule base on that. The way other domains of kind of training computers, neural networks, they have the neural in them. They're coming from that. So we gave you a lot of those things. So I take credit for that. At the same time, to take it back, now that it's out in the wild, we go and we understand ourselves better. We see how people interact with machines, and we learn that this experience makes people feel more intimate. So we say, okay, I guess this is what makes people intimate. So we're learning now backwards from this AI, and there's no way to do one without the other, and I think that they go together. And if you want one kind of headline sentence for whoever listens to us right now, I think that AI is in everyone's life. There's no question. Everyone can, in this room, believe that. I think that the world of the future isn't going to be won by AI versus humans. That's kind of the classical, conundrum people always put. I think it's going to be won by humans with AI. So radiologist with AI is going to be better than a radiologist without. And in that sense, I think that neuroscience with AI is the future.
So it's a tool.
Yeah.
I always say, like, you can't build a house without a hammer, but a hammer can't build a house without a human.
There's a dynamic here that I think we became a little bit the tools of our tools. So we have a tool, but I think that those tools also kind of a little bit use us.
The computer's a tool,
yeah,
and AI is inside the computer, is sort of what you're saying.
And I think that in this realm, there's the tools, but we start to be dependent on them so much so that we now cannot live our lives without the defibrillator or without the AI.
Yeah, and we see that with our phones, right?
Yeah.
I used to remember 20 phone numbers of friends, family, whatever. I now remember my wife's phone number, my kids' phone numbers, and the phone number I had from the age of 4 to 10. I don't know how I remember, but like 466-8084. I don't, hopefully, when I forget that, I'll know I need the chip.
Some person in DC gets a phone right now.
Right. Oh, no, I actually grew up in New York City. I moved to DC right out of school. But don't tell my Wikipedia that. It says I grew up in DC. So back to last weekend.
Yes.
Right? You're hanging with the Pope. You're talking about artificial intelligence, cyber, nuclear war. How does that happen? What's going on in that room?
So it's pretty cool, I must say.
One would guess,
This
right?
is not something I do frequently. It seems like it's...
You're not hanging with the Pope on weekends?
No, this is my one time and my one Pope. So I think that I would say that this particular Pope is very progressive. I think many would agree. And he's looking at the world and he's trying to not just kind of look at what's out there and respond to it, but also look at previous popes and respond to their kind of ideas. A few popes ago, there was a pope that had to respond to nuclear war when the Soviet Union and the US were both arming up. He had to give the Vatican...
The Cuban Missile Crisis?
Exactly. So he came up with a position...
Who was pope then? Was that John Paul?
Yeah, I know my numbers. XXMC.
Yeah, that was a pope. Yeah. Keep going.
And so he came up with a position of the Vatican back then, and the world was already kind of tense. The two nations kind of about to go to nuclear war. Since then, we have 7 more nations that joined the armed force, and we have AI that people are worried about.
That we know about.
Exactly.
7 more we know
yes. about. And there's cyber, and there's biological weapons and so on. So Pope 2023 says I need to both have a broader position, but I also want to have a position on things that didn't happen yet, like neural implants and things that didn't happen. And I also want to amend what my predecessor said a little bit, which is the previous guy said something like, to prepare for peace, we need to be ready for war. And the new guy said, I want to change this language to not seem like we somehow endorse war. And he called...
That would, by the way, that's an odd policy from the Vatican.
Yeah.
I mean, I could see, a lot of countries taking that policy.
In a way, first of all,
it is a country, but
it's interesting because
not a nuclear
why would
power.
they have a position altogether, right?
Yeah, right.
On that, but I was surprised that among the cardinals that were there was a cardinal for AI, they have a cardinal for cyber, so they actually are quite progressive on thinking about it. And the Pope and his kind of disciples, in that sense, realized that they have a really big microphone. And even if they can't really wield any nuclear power, they can actually change policies. So they bring people. I prepared a lot of jokes for this thing. None of them landed.
Shocking.
I managed to offend.
An Israeli in the Vatican didn't land jokes?
I'll tell you, I had one funny one that I thought was hilarious. That basically something along the lines of, the Pope basically asked us to help write a statement from the Vatican that's going to come out when he speaks about that. And I said, if I'm putting words in the Pope's mouth, does it make me God? Did not land at all. Then I had another one.
By the way, that's a joke I would make, and my wife wouldn't talk to me for 2 hours.
The Pope is single, so there's not a problem there.
By the way, I have a great joke right there that I'm not going to make, so it's perfect.
So then I said, okay, I have another one that was that I thought would not go well, so I didn't use this one, and the one I used was even worse. So I'll tell you what it is. This is only viewed by 10,000 people.
That's it.
So I
They're
was
probably
planning,
not all watching this second. But
they're going to tell him, I think. He has eyes everywhere. So I was planning to explain that we tend to find patterns brain-wise in things that happen very infrequently enough to create a rule. So I was going to say something like, I play basketball every now and then. I wear my blue underwear. If I win and I wear the blue underwear 3 times in a row, I believe that this is the right reason. And from then on, so I was going to say it's probably not, but the brain immediately kind of goes there. And I was going to talk about it, but then I said it's not a good idea to speak about underwear, Vatican. I'll use something else. And the other example I used is, imagine I do miracle 3 times, you call me a saint. Turns out.
Oh my God, they do.
Yes.
They do.
So even my death joke didn't win. Nothing worked.
I'm funny, you're not. No, that was very clever.
That was
All right, so let's pivot. We're going to move from comedy. We'll leave that to Seth Rogen and the Pope. And let's talk about your side hustle, right? So your day job, you're a Columbia professor, you're published, and you've given this TED Talk that like 32 billion people have seen, like it's one of the most watched TED Talks in history.
I'm great.
Oh, yeah, you are. Sandra is not entirely sure, but we'll talk. That's his wife. But let's talk a bit about your side hustle, right? So according to the New York Times, you are helping the government to rethink how they create and manage the nuclear launch codes for the United States' nuclear arsenal. First of all, can you confirm or deny that?
I'm keeping an ambiguity on this one. So I think so. It's a little bit more complex, but the bottom line is similarly where there are many stages between me and the president. But I think that the aim is the same, to kind of come up with a better way to secure ourselves. Yeah.
Okay.
Tell me more.
Yeah.
So it comes no surprise to many of you that in the US there are nuclear weapons, but might not be as familiar to you is that basically that's the single most critical decision that a president can make, and it's the only one that they make alone.
By the way, if that's a surprise to anybody in this room, we got big problems.
So you'll be surprised. So I thought
pushing the nuclear button, that I would assume that's the president's biggest decision.
And it's the only one that they have no checks and balances on. Like no one can stop them if they say do that. It's happening no matter what.
Is that true?
Yeah. There's no other choice.
So when they call to NORAD, and they've got to break the piece of paper or break the code. Yeah. They pull out, I mean, I've seen every movie on the planet, right? Yeah. So they pull out it, the guy says the code, he confirms it back, he says, do you have your key? The 2 guys go to the thing, hit the key. Mm-hmm. Joint Chiefs, nobody has anything to say other than...
Not only that, but this question that you just asked, if you were working for the military, would get you fired. So you're not even allowed to question this process. That's how people religiously talk about it. Like there was one guy who basically said, is there no one between me and the president? And they said, if you ask that, you're not qualified to be the person who did this thing because we think that it's religiously this way. This decision, the fact that the protocol goes like this, was basically decided like that by one guy in the 1940s after Truman said during World War II, after they used 2 bombs, there was a 3rd one in the making, and he said, guys, this is not what I had in mind. From now on, every time you launch a bomb, that is of that magnitude, nuclear, hydrogen, and so on, I want to be the person authorizing that. This was the first time it was decided, and then it was codified a few years later, and that's it. For the last 78 years, it's established that the president is the only one to decide. The thing is, the president isn't in a way trained for that, not that it's about him, it's about any president. No one in our life has the ability to train themselves to think about those decisions and to really prepare for them. Because
well, I mean, listen, I don't want to get fired, but I'm not sure any one individual should be able to kill 200 million people in like 10 seconds without maybe asking someone.
So now that we
So are you giving this advice to the government, hopefully?
Yeah, so now that we agree that there's a problem, now comes the question, okay, so we don't like the current protocol, what comes instead? Should it be 5 people, 3 people? If it's 2 people, what happens? One says yes, one says no. If it's 5, what if they're not able to reach their 4th one or the 5th one, and then you have to kind of decide what to do.
These are all surmountable, in my opinion, versus the alternative.
So I agree with you, first of all. And I think that most people in the position that are responsible for that said the same, including presidents that we spoke to and chiefs of staff. They all agree that something is not right about the protocol the way it is. It's just that people have a hard time saying what's instead. So they came to scientists and said, OK, come up with an alternative. And that's what we're spending all the time right now, thinking what would be the better option. And I think this is relevant just to be clear to everyone in this room, because even if you're not going to be the president and not going to be in charge of nuclear weapons, you probably are going to make in your life a few decisions that are critical, that would be kind of instrumental to your life. Who to marry, when to have a child, I don't know.
By the way, you should be careful. You're married, your wife's pregnant.
Yeah, that I made 2 decisions that
Don't
are
mess
right.
this up.
2 good decisions already in my kind of belt. And I think that we're all going to make a few of those decisions in our life. And the question is, how do you prepare for them? Forget like president. At some point, someone's going to come to you and say, will you marry me? Usually, they expect an answer within a few minutes from that moment.
Yeah.
And now,
my wife made me wait a few seconds. It was nerve-wracking.
It might even not been seconds. In your mind, it's been hours, right?
Yeah.
Like those minutes. So I think all of
The
those.
look on her face was good. So it was like I had a good indicator of interest here.
That's a good start.
Well, that's what we do at Zeta, right? It's all about indication of interest.
Yeah, you have like a.
So you are a neuroscientist, yet you teach at Columbia Business School, right? So first question, why? Second question, how does that work?
So I think I threw at you this idea that many of my former students in neuroscience end up going to work in companies in Silicon Valley. That's basically the case. A lot of the companies, many of them in this room, are beginning to understand that neuroscientists have a lot of use for them. If they're working on AI, then you want to understand how the brain works. If you're working in marketing, many domains of marketing right now are neuroscience domain. Attention and even how do you make people gamify experiences. There's a lot of neuroscience kind of 101 things. So they're starting to hire neuroscientists. With that in mind, the business school said, you know what, if your people become business people, we might as well have someone like you teach the future of business leaders how the brain works.
After today, you sure you want me to do that?
They're very open to that, and I think that they see the value of understanding how people make decisions, how marketing works, how the biases impact our brains, how to understand ourselves when we come to make decisions about small or big things. We want to understand also not just ourselves, but the team around us and how the brain of one person impacts the brain of another. So it starts to be that the kind of separation between business, medicine, or psychology are kind of becoming a little bit less kind of clear, and that's when neuroscientists, at least a few, start to go to business school, and I think should be in everyone's life accessible within a speed dial. So if you have questions on that field, you can actually get answers from someone who knows the brain.
One of the super cool things I think about what you do, right, is not a lot of people in your position stay professors, right? Like you could go, I mean, Google, Facebook, you know, Meta, sorry, would pay anything, right, to go join their organization. Yet you continue to teach the future of the world. I mean, I'd say America, but I don't want to sound like I'm being biased, but mostly Americans. What, like when you see your students and they go off to work for Elon or in other places, what is the cool stuff you see them doing? Like, what comes back to you? Like, geez, we're working on this. What's the future of technology from your vantage point?
So I strongly believe in the power of businesses to shape the world. I think that when I was a kid, I thought that the world is shaped by mostly presidents and kings and queens.
Well, you were born in France.
I was born in France.
And you moved to Israel.
Yes.
And then you ended up in Canada, and then you moved to America.
Pretty much, kind of the journey was missing 2 or 3 continents, but I'm good.
Whatever.
Yes.
Close enough for government work.
Yeah.
So
I really believe that the leaders of the future are going to be, back then, kind of the people that I saw in the head of a pyramid of politics. I changed my mind. I think that a lot more of the people who dominate the kind of future and are in charge are people in the business world, both because they see longer term. They don't see 4 years. They don't see 2 years. They see longer term. And also because they have to navigate an environment that is adapting differently. They don't have to worry just about their own country, but they have to worry about the world. They have to worry about like how AI impacts other countries, or the same company has. So I think that and in that sense, I felt like the place to be, if I want to have an influence, is on this stage with a person who actually runs a big company that I can, inject ideas and suggest things and so on. I think it will impact the world a lot more.
Are you putting them in my dreams yet, and I just don't know it?
That's my hope, that you let me sleep next to you and put stuff in your...
Let's not get too excited, all right? We'll sleep in the next room. That'll be fine.
Start with that.
We'll start there. Yeah, well, we'll finish there. But in all seriousness, when you think about, like, what are you hearing back from these kids? Like, who's called you in the last 30, 60, 90 days that was a student that said, I'm working on something that I just can't believe that blew you away?
I think that I have two students that are kind of out there that I keep in touch with, and they tell me what's going on.
So all the students you've ever had, you only keep in touch with two?
No, I monitor all of them. There are some that I like, it's like kids, some that I like more, some that I like less.
No, you like all your kids the same. I love all of my children.
I have only one so far that's in the making, and I love him the most.
One would hope.
Yes.
It's in utero, but keep going.
Yes.
So these two students called you.
They called back, and I did not expect them. And basically, they told me about project that they're working on right now, and they offer the data. And they said, look, we have the data, we're thinking that it's going to be useful for academics to use that and so on. We're looking for a partnership. And it was already interesting for me that there's a kind of a turning back. Like, you train them, they go somewhere else, they come back to you with data and so on. It was more interesting when I learned that this data is actually data that basically it's defense data. I would never have access to it directly. If I called some defense kind of organization and say, hey, I would like to work with you, who am I? But through the world of business, you can have access to things that you directly don't have. They told me about this project. They told me what they're aiming for. I got a sense of like where the world is heading. And in that sense, I think that there's a nice fusion of politics, business, academics who work together. If you manage to do it, and you basically, from my perspective, put plans. Like you put a student here, put a student there, you create kind of an ecosystem that you can talk to afterwards. That's great for me.
That's cool. All right, future of AI. We're not letting you get out of here without it.
So I think that, I do feel that it's going to be more and more trying to replicate how the brain works. I saw that there are kind of companies who basically are now trying to not just say AI is a separate machine that you interact with, but it's a camera that tells you, hey, pick this wrench to build the IKEA thing. No, not this wrench, try the other one because we're looking at you from above.
God, I could use that.
So that I think that the AI we have right now is kind of like you ask a question, you get an answer, and it's very kind of you prompt it, and I think that the next one is going to be surrounding you, and it's going to say, hey, I'm seeing you cooking it, just kind of giving you an advice. If you add a little bit of salt, it's going to be better. I know you, I know your wife.
No, but is this a chip in your brain?
Chip in your brain would be the end result.
So it's not glasses, or is it augmented reality glasses? Like what? Be a little more tangible. It's easy to say this type of stuff. Come on.
Start camera in your house. So your kind of smart camera sits there, but constantly watches and constantly gives advice. So that's kind of level 1, which is right now. Version 2, I think, on-demand internet. Meaning right now, the websites that we know exist, and we go visit them, and maybe they even change themselves for us, but they exist before. Someone put a
website personalization is one of our biggest businesses.
I see that as a future, which is, I think, one step. Like Internet 4 is really like the internet doesn't exist until you visit. It's kind of a quantum thing. Like there's no internet until you go visit, and then it's built for you, and maybe a domain is there, and so all the things that kind of are people here working right now. And I think option 4 is that it starts talking to you. So you're kind of, you're not really the one asking questions, getting an answer, but it comes to you and say, let me kind of drive your behavior. Future step 2, it's in your brain. So you drive your car and you ask yourself the question that you used to ask your phone, how do I get to this restaurant? Normally it would be from your thoughts to the phone, to a cloud, the answer to the phone, to your psyche. Now, all of this is going to be in your brain, so you just think the thought. How do I get to this restaurant? The thought is turned into a chip that sends it to the cloud, asks the question, gives you back the answer, and you just feel, yeah, of course.
The chip doesn't have the capability to send it to the cloud in that size yet. We're ways away from that. I could see it interacting with the phone, and then the phone really.
Yeah, I was skipping the mechanics of that. But yes, from the chip to a nearby device, to the cloud and back. And I think that philosophical question that it begs that I think is interesting is, what does it feel like? Right. So when I ask the question of my phone, it feels like I'm asking a question. I get the answer. The feeling is I definitely know that the information came in. When it's in my mind and I kind of think the thought, I need to go this place, and I say, yeah, I should go right, not knowing that in between my asking the question and getting the answer, the entire world was bidding for my thoughts. It feels different.
Last question.
Yeah.
AI going to kill us or not?
No.
Good. Thank you, guys.